Hey everybody, today I'm going to work on my 2007 Honda Pilot EXL with rear entertainment system, which has the climate control. I was driving around yesterday and I noticed the front blower and AC stopped functioning, even though the climate control itself was saying that it was on and running and all that. Also, the rear blower was still working, so I know it's not a complete system failure. My guess would be, since I've already had the well-known power transistor problem with the rear blower and repaired that this might very well be the same problem. I'm going to skip a lot of other potential diagnosis points of checking the fuse even, which some people might think is foolish, and let's just try the transistor first. It's a quick and easy test, and on this car, I had a little trouble finding it, but I have actually found it. So what I'm going to do is try to show you real quick where the transistor is, and then from that point I'm going to pull it out and try to disconnect the connector, because there's a connector on it, and then there's a test that the service manual says to try out. We'll probably do a bypass test just to make sure the blower cuts on, and if that's actually the case, then I'll know that it's the transistor. And from that point, if you are following along and want to try to do this yourself at your own, risk or whatnot, then you can follow along and try to do the same thing yourself. These transistors are available. You can get them OEM. I suspect you can pick up aftermarket. What I did for the rear blower transistor for the rear blower was actually took it apart, tested the components, and found out which component was bad. If you're capable of doing that, go right ahead. But that's not for the faint of heart or anyone who's ever done that, who hasn't ever done that before. In this case, I had no problems doing it and found the part and fixed it, saved myself a bunch of money in the process. And if I do that and if I find the transistor is wrong, I will record that probably in a second part. So first off, here's the front of the car. The transistor itself is underneath the glove box. I'm not sure how well this is all going to be focused. It's under the glove box. You don't have to take it apart. It's just a pain in the butt to get to, because it's actually, let's see if I can show you. It's underneath, so going underneath the glove box. It's under here. And assuming I'm zoomed in right and focused on the right spot, there's a connector, and you'll see this big wire. Or big bundle of wires, and then this plug here is the actual plug that goes into the transistor, which is this entire piece. And let me focus in again, make sure, and that's where it is. So I'm going to take that out. I'm going to, instead of unplugging it, there's 3 screws that hold it in, and then I'm going to take it out, try to disconnect it first, and then test the line out, because there's a clip on there and it's really hard to get to. So anyway, if I get it out, I'll show you what it looks like and all that. Anyway, I'll be back. All right, I'm back. I have the power transistor out. There's a wiring harness, the one that was covering it up, that you have to, there's a clip that holds the harness in place. You need to pop that loose. It's like similar like the trim panel clips and whatnot. So here's the transistor itself, and this is the connector I'm going to have to take loose. There's a clip here. I'm going to have to use 2 hands, so I'm going to pop that loose. And there's one on both sides, and that's how you get it out. They don't have tabs, so I think you're going to have to pry that out carefully to get this thing out, and then at that point there's 4 wires. The manual is to test. I'll try to show you the printout for that on how to test it. From that point, basically what you're going to do is by running power to the right line, if it's 12 volts. And I don't advise doing this unless you're more prepared to do this and you're on your own. If you do this, I feel confident, so I'm going to do it for myself. But that will allow me to test this and see if the blower motor itself is fine, in which case I know the issue will be in the transistor, and thus I can focus on it to try to see if I need to fix it. I'll be back in a bit. Hey everybody, I'm back. I went ahead and decided to pull this is from the service manual. These are all the steps, well, these are the first 2 steps for testing the front power transistor. So what they say to do, of course, they just say, hey, disconnect the connector and then test it in place. I don't find that to be easy because that connector is very difficult to get off. I show you, but there's these two clips that fit inside these two pins. Let's see if I can try to get this in focused a little closer so you can see it. There's two pins that fit here, and the connector comes in, and they're very difficult to get off. So I pulled it, and then it was easier to access to pull the connector off. Now, according to the test, what you're supposed to do then is then you test. The first thing you do is you test between these two pins. So this is pin 1, pin 3, pin 4, and pin 5. There is no pin 2. And you just test the resistance. What they're wanting to see is what the internal resistance is. So if I can get my multimeter in here with the pins, I might be able to actually get a pretty decent measurement. I've already checked it and it checks out fine, but that doesn't mean that it's good. That just means that one part is. So assuming we get this right, it is 1.4990 kilo ohms, which is extremely close to what it's supposed to be. It should be 1.4 to 1.5 kilo ohms, so it's well within where it should be. So that's that part. The next steps, I'll just go ahead and show you real quick what it says to do is then you're supposed to go and from the line, you're supposed to pop this out, which I've already done and tested outside. And then you put insulation on this, and then you run 12 volts of that, and then you turn it on to see if the blower runs. I've already done that, and it failed, but I'll take the camera back out to the car and show you what I'm talking about with that. I'm not going to do it since I've already done it, but I'm pretty sure at this point my transistor has a problem. Now, as I said at the start, I'm going to go and pull it and then try to see, or pull this apart and see if I can find out what's wrong, just like I did with the rear transistor some time ago. And I'll go show you what it looks like in the car. All right, everybody, so I'm back out here in the car. I've reconnected the transistor back up to the cable which runs from to the motor and so forth. So we performed the first part of the test, which was to check the terminals between 1 and 4, that resistance, because there's a resistor in the component. So now we're going to do the second part of the test, which is to see if it'll pass power. So I have a jumper wire I've gone and set up. You're supposed to disconnect the orange and black wire, which is this one, and then tape it off, which I'll do in a second. And then you run 12 volts to this and turn the car on. I'll do it a little different. I have a power probe 4, and I'm going to apply 12 volt power to this, which in turn, assuming the power transistor is okay, it should come on and everything should be fine. If it doesn't, then you can be guaranteed that the transistor is bad. Now, that's not completely true though, because the reality is the transistor might be good and the motor might be bad, so you have to test the motor by itself separately regardless. Or I will say if it doesn't work, you need to test the motor independent, and I think I have a way to do that real quick. Anyway, I'm going to go ahead and get set up. I've got a jumper wire in already, as you can see, and then I'm going to go and run power into it. Hang on a second. Alright, so I got my power probe. I'll make sure you guys are focused in a bit here. So now I'm going to apply 12 volts to it, and I've got the car on, so let's see if I can get this to work. And it is applying 12 volts and the blower is not coming on. So at this point we can be assured that it's either the blower motor or the transistor. Probably the transistor, but I'll perform a quick test in a second, hopefully show you that we can see if it's the motor's working too. Hang on. Alright, so according to the circuit diagram, which I can't really show you too well, but the supply for the blower motor comes in and then it goes through leaves, and then it goes through the transistor, which is the power transistor itself. And all it does, I won't get into the circuitry in this one, but basically if you ground this blue-red, well, first things first, I'm jumping ahead actually. If you check the blue-red coming out of it with it on, it should come back as a plus 12 volts, because if the circuit's good, that means that the supply is coming into the battery, into the motor, and then it leaves, and then what the transistor controls is the ground. So if you test the blue-red connector, which is coming from the motor with the key on, and if you've got the climate control on, it should come back as 12 volts. You can also check your ground by checking the other pin. This goes to ground, and if this is ground, you're in good shape, so at least you know your circuit's complete. Now, if you want to test your blower, what you do is you apply 12 volt, you ground this, the blue-red pin, briefly, and that if the blower comes on, you know that your blower is good. So I'm going to show you that. It's going to be kind of hard for me to do it with two hands, but first things first, if we check, I'll try to hold it up with my foot, sorry. I checked the blue-red, which is this pin, and the power probe is saying it is 12 volts, which means it's good. And if I check the black, power probe says, should come back as a ground, if I can get it, and it's 0, and that's good. Now if I apply ground very quickly to the blower comes on briefly. I hope you heard that, and that means my blower is good. So I can guarantee for a fact that the issue with this is the power transistor. So now that's the end of this. I would say that if you've gone through all this test and you've seen the same problem, go ahead and you can go to part 2, which is where I'm going to try to fix the power transistor, or you can just go ahead and buy one. They're available all over. You can get them on Amazon, parts stores, Honda parts stores like Honda Parts Now, Honda Parts Online, and so on. So that's it for this video. I hope you find this useful or handy. And if you want to, you can subscribe and see more. And thanks, and hope to see you again.